That expression could rival any comedy performed in the grandest theaters. Yes, I know. You're sitting there wondering if perhaps you've wandered into the wrong hearth tonight. But Chronicler, you're thinking, that's not quite how you sounded last time I visited. And you're absolutely right to notice. Sharp ears, that's what I appreciate about you. Here's a secret, my observant friend. I am older than you might imagine, and I have learned many voices over the eons. Sometimes, when a particular tale stirs in my collection, it brings with it the voice that first told it, the cadence of its birthplace, the cadence of its original teller. Tonight's story comes from hills not so far away, but not so close that you could walk it, and it seems to have awakened the voice of that almost distant land within me. Don't worry, I'm still the same keeper of tales you've grown to trust. Now, shall we see what magic this voice brings to tonight's chronicle of the Wyrmspeaker's Doubt? Varram the White stood at the edge of the ice cliff, watching the aurora dance across the polar sky. The lights were beautiful tonight, sheets of green and gold that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. But all he could think about was the weight of the white dragon mask in his hands and the terrible certainty that he was about to make the worst mistake of his life. The mask was ancient, carved from the skull of the first white dragon to serve Tiamat, and it pulsed with a cold that had nothing to do with the Arctic wind. When he wore it, he could feel the Dragon Queen's presence in his mind, her thoughts mingling with his own until he could no longer tell where Varram ended and Tiamat began. It should have been exhilarating. For 40 years he'd served the cult of the dragon, working his way up from a simple acolyte to one of the 5 Wyrmspeakers, the most powerful servants of the Queen of Dragons. He'd commanded armies, conquered cities, and watched as lesser mortals bowed before the might of his draconic allies. Everything he'd ever wanted was within his grasp. So why did he feel so empty? Varram. The voice came from behind him, deep and resonant with barely contained power. He turned to see Rezmir, the Black Wyrmspeaker, approaching across the ice. She wore her own mask, a thing of midnight scales and burning eyes that made the air around her shimmer with heat. The ritual preparations are complete. The others are waiting. The others? Varram's voice was flat, emotionless. Tell me, Rezmir, do you ever wonder if we're making a mistake? She paused, her masked face tilting slightly as if she was trying to understand a foreign language. A mistake. We stand on the verge of the greatest triumph in the history of our order. In less than an hour, we will begin the summoning that will free our queen from her prison. How could that be a mistake? Because she's not our queen, Varram said quietly. She's nobody's queen. She's a force of nature like a hurricane or an earthquake. You don't rule a hurricane, Rezmir. You just try to survive it. You're having doubts. There was something that might have been sympathy in her voice, though it was hard to tell through the mask's distortion. It's natural. The magnitude of what we're attempting would give anyone pause. But think of what we'll gain. Power beyond imagining. The respect of every dragon in existence. Immortality itself. And what will we lose? Varram turned back to the aurora, watching the lights dance. Our humanity? Our free will? Our souls? Small prices to pay for godhood. Are they? Varram held up the white mask, studying its empty eye sockets. Do you know what I see when I wear this, Rezmir? I see the world as Tiamat sees it. Every living thing is either a threat to be destroyed or a tool to be used. There's no beauty in her vision, no joy, no love, just endless hunger and the will to dominate. You speak of love as if it's a strength, Rezmir said, her voice taking on a harder edge. But love is weakness. It makes you vulnerable, makes you hesitate when you should act. The dragons understand this. They take what they want without apology, without doubt.
The dragons are dying out,
Varram replied.
Have you noticed that? Every generation there are fewer of them. They're too proud to work together, too selfish to sacrifice for the greater good. They mate rarely, protect their young poorly, and spend more time fighting each other than their enemies. Is that really the model we want to follow?
Rezmir was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer. You weren't always like this, Varram. What changed? The question hit him like a physical blow. What had changed? When had he started questioning everything he'd once believed with absolute certainty? The answer came to him slowly, like dawn breaking over a distant mountain.
I met a child, he said finally, 3 months ago in the ruins of Phandalin. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, hiding in the cellar of a burned house. Her parents were dead, killed in our raid, but she wasn't afraid of me. She was too young to understand what the mask meant, too innocent to know she should be terrified.
He paused, remembering the moment with perfect clarity.
She asked me if I was there to help her find her parents, and for just a moment I wanted to say yes. I wanted to take off this mask and help her, protect her, give her the comfort she needed, but I didn't. I walked away and left her there, because that's what a Wyrmspeaker does. We don't save people, Rezmir. We create orphans.
That child was weak, Rezmir said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. The strong survive, the weak perish. That's the natural order.
Is it?
Varram turned to face her fully.
Or is that just what we tell ourselves to justify the pain we cause? I've been thinking about that girl for months, wondering if she survived, if she found someone to care for her. And I realized something. She showed me more courage in that moment than I've ever shown in 40 years of service to the cult. She faced the unknown with hope instead of fear. That's not weakness, Rezmir. That's the strongest thing in the world.
The black Wyrmspeaker stepped closer, her mask gleaming in the aurora light. You're talking about abandoning everything we've worked for, everything we've sacrificed for. The other Wyrmspeakers won't understand. They'll see it as betrayal.
Maybe it is betrayal,
Varram admitted.
But maybe there are things worth betraying. Maybe there are lines we shouldn't cross, even in service to our gods.
Tiamat is not just our god, Varram. She's the source of all draconic power, the mother of dragons, the
queen of destruction.
Varram finished.
Yes, I know her titles, but have you ever wondered why she was imprisoned in the first place? The stories we tell ourselves speak of jealous gods and cosmic betrayal, but what if it's simpler than that? What if she was locked away because she was too dangerous to be free? What if the other gods, good and evil alike, recognized that some powers are too destructive to be unleashed?
Rezmir's silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was barely a whisper. If you're right, if we're wrong about this, then we're about to destroy the world.
Not destroy,
Varram corrected.
Transform. But into what? A world where might makes right, where the strong prey on the weak without consequence, where love and compassion are seen as flaws to be eliminated. Is that really the future we want to create?
The aurora pulsed overhead, and for a moment both Wyrmspeakers stood in silence, contemplating the magnitude of what they were about to do. The ritual would begin soon, and once it started, there would be no going back. The other Wyrmspeakers, Galvin the Blue, Neranvain the Green, and Severin the Red, were already in position, their portions of the grand summoning circle prepared. "What are you asking me to do?" Rezmir asked finally.
"I'm asking you to choose,"
Varram replied.
"Not as a Wyrmspeaker, not as a servant of Tiamat, but as a person. Look inside yourself, past the mask, past the power, past the fear. What do you really want? What would make you proud to be human?"
Rezmir raised her hands to her mask, her fingers tracing the edges of the midnight scales. "I've worn this for so long, I'm not sure I remember who I was before. The mask, it changes you. It makes you think thoughts that aren't your own, want things that aren't your desires."
"I know,"
Varram said gently.
"The white mask whispers to me constantly. It shows me visions of a world covered in ice, where nothing grows, nothing lives, nothing changes. Perfect order, perfect stillness. But that's not life, Rezmir. That's death wearing a crown."
"And if we refuse, if we don't complete the ritual?"
"Then the other Wyrmspeakers will try to stop us. They'll see us as traitors, as obstacles to be removed. But maybe that's a fight worth having. Maybe it's time someone stood up to the cult and said no more."
Rezmir was quiet for a long time, and when she spoke her voice was different, younger, more uncertain, but somehow more real. "I had a sister once, before the cult, before the mask. Her name was Lysa, and she used to make flower crowns for the village children. She died in a plague 20 years ago, and I joined the cult because I thought power would make the pain go away."
"Did it?"
"No. It just made me forget why I was in pain in the first place. But I never stopped missing her. Even with the mask, even with all the power and authority, I never stopped wanting to see her smile again." Varram nodded slowly.
"My son would have been 30 this year. He died in a fire when he was 7, and I couldn't save him. I thought, if I had enough power, I could prevent anyone from ever feeling that helpless again. But all I've done is make more people feel the way I felt that day."
"So what do we do?" Varram looked at the white mask in his hands, then at Rezmir, then back at the aurora dancing overhead.
"We make a choice. We decide who we want to be in the time we have left, and we hope that when our story is over, someone will remember us as people who chose love over fear, hope over despair, redemption over revenge."
"The others will come for us."
"Yes, but they'll have to find us first."
Varram smiled, and for the first time in decades, it was a real smile, not the cold expression he wore as a Wyrmspeaker.
"And I know a little girl in Phandalin who might need someone to help her find her way home."
Without another word, he hurled the white mask over the cliff edge, watching it tumble into the darkness below. The cold that had been constant companion for so long began to fade, replaced by something warmer, something that felt like hope. Rezmir hesitated for only a moment before following suit, her black mask spinning through the air like a falling star. As it disappeared into the night, she felt the last of Tiamat's influence slip away, leaving behind only the person she'd been before the cult claimed her. "Where do we go from here?" she asked.
"South,"
Varram replied.
"Away from the ice, away from the cold. Toward the places where things can grow, where children can play, where people can choose their own destiny."
They walked away from the cliff together, leaving behind the ritual site, the summoning circle, and 40 years of service to a cause that had promised them everything. and given them nothing but emptiness. Behind them, the aurora continued its dance, beautiful and wild and free. The other Wyrmspeakers would complete the ritual without them, or they would fail. Either way, it was no longer their burden to bear. They had chosen a different path, one that led not to power or glory, but to something far more precious, the chance to be human again. And in the ruins of Phandalin, a little girl waited for someone to help her find her way home. And so, this tale draws to a close. Though its echoes may linger in your dreams, the fire burns lower now. But don't despair, I've countless more stories waiting to be shared with you. If this tale stirred something within you, if it reminded you why magic still matters in this mundane world, then please, light your own beacon. That glowing thumbs up tells the spirits of story that our fellowship grows stronger. Subscribe to join our circle permanently and ring that notification bell. That way, you'll know the moment I return with new chronicles. The fire burns brightest when more souls gather around it. Wouldn't you agree? Now, if that's the case, share this tale with another weary soul who needs it, reminding them adventure still exists. Tag a friend who would appreciate a good story by the fire. The more who believe, the more real these worlds become. And if you're new to our hearth, explore the playlist of chronicles that I've gathered. Tales of heroes and villains, love and loss, magic and mystery. Each one carefully chosen for souls like yours. Until the fire calls us together again, may your own adventures be worthy of legend, and may you never lose the wonder that brought you here tonight. Travel or sleep well, brave soul. The long rest awaits your return.